Hello, and welcome to Rush, a 4-minute podcast. I'm your host, Justin Hodson, and today we take a brief journey into leveraging campus resources to expand the learning space and learning experience for students. One of the biggest challenges that I think instructors face, at least in my experience with instructors and faculty development, when it comes to bringing in new tools and new technologies and new practices, is that there is a fundamental sense in which they have to be able to not only teach the technology or tool to students, but also to be able to troubleshoot things with students, to guide them to respond to issues. And I often say that, the expertise we bring to the table as faculty is the ways in which our disciplines know and understand and do and make and represent the thinking of that discipline. And so you don't have to know how to make a video to know whether a video is representing ideas in a way that is consistent with sort of the current scholarly thinking in your field or historical scholarly perspectives or things like that, right? And that doesn't mean that you can't maybe better help students if you understand the difference between a jump cut or an L cut or why a crossfade matters. But the reality is that technological expertise is secondary to your disciplinary expertise. This is one of the areas that we sort of thrive and developing knowledge and understanding that our disciplines by design are ways of knowing, doing, and making, right? Or engaging in the world and not just like a content block. And so, it kind of goes against our very nature. We typically in higher ed as faculty, we often think of ourselves as, or we often are positioned as, I should say, armies of one. And so it becomes even harder for us to think about the space of the classroom and the engagement, the learning experience at the core of the classroom as being inherently outward facing, right? That, by design, we take our classrooms and we box them in and here's our syllabus and here's our content and it's structured into these weeks. And there's all kinds of parts that go into that, right? But we struggle with this kind of tension of how do we create space in our curriculum for teaching video? But the university and colleges that most of us are on have amazing resources and student support networks in place, student support services to really help augment and enhance the kind of learning experience we can provide. And we got to start thinking of our classrooms as not being blocked off, but as being points of intersection with this wider sort of a range of resources available on a campus. And so, maybe it's I have someone from the instructional design team or the technology learning team come in and teach a unit on a video editing in my class. Or maybe, after I introduce the video editing assignment to students, I point to the writing center for where they can get help, not only on their papers, but maybe on their media development. Maybe it's something like I produce, step-by-step guides that they can look at outside of class, or I leverage a bunch of internet videos showing them walkthroughs and steps to how to develop an ability to make a podcast. And so, we need to think about the opportunities we can provide students outside the learning space of the classroom. We're not bounded only by that 1 hour limit, right? That we think about, well, if you have 3 hours in class each week, you give me 6 hours outside of that space. Maybe instead of 6 hours of reading or homework, maybe that homework part or assignment work involves attending a workshop on a video editing or attending an event, thinking about the learning space itself and the learning experience as being fundamentally distributed rather than the sole ownership of me, the faculty, building a rectangular box of a class, right? So this is something I've been struggling with since I've been trying to think through, how do I more intentionally open up the space, the learning space in my class and learning experience in my class to the rich resources that are on my campus in strategic and meaningful ways.